Here is this young boy who loves, like every Hindu child, he's been brought up on, weaned on the stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata. He relates to these characters. Again, you can see he's becoming discerning. He said this marriage system seems tricky. So Ram and Sita out, Hanuman in. You can see he's struggling, even at this very young age. Now he's entering adulthood. And the real struggle begins now. You see, here is this Vivekananda, naturally compassionate. He looks around Calcutta and he sees so much poverty, so much degradation, so much suffering all around him. He has heard of religion, this idea of a super personality called God who has created the universe, and is supposed to be all compassionate, all knowing, all powerful, standard stuff in every religion. And he sees tremendous degradation, tremendous suffering all. Even today, if you go to Calcutta, it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't make you shudder, you're not human. The degradation is very visible, very frightening. And this young boy now, entering adulthood, now you see his rational faculties are kicked in fully. He looks around. He says this whole idea is suspect. Religions are a suspect. This suffering that we see all around does not make sense. Either God is not all powerful, or he's not compassionate at all. Maybe he's an evil monster. We should fight this God, he said, rather than believe and worship him. Look at the creation. So much suffering. How can he possibly allow that? I'd rather not believe in God. Remember, I told you his father was already an agnostic. So the boy has inherited this ability to challenge, to question his religion. It is necessary for every youth of any religion or no religion to follow the same process. Look, you have this faculty that you possess that allows you to make sense of the world that you live in. Why can't you use the same faculty to come to terms regarding the issues of religion and God and spiritual? What is all this about? I want to understand it properly. Make it sensible. So this boy now, from being a very devout little boy, worshipping Hanuman and Ram and all the Shiva, suddenly decides now to throw this all away, cast it aside, and challenge the idea of God. How can he get any verification about God? What's the first thing you would do? Think about it. Suppose you had the same problem. What would you do? You'd go to the religious, the so-called religious leaders in your community and ask them very bluntly. And this is what he did. He started to visit all the major religious leaders in Calcutta who would arrive in Calcutta, who would be passing by. He would go there. He would listen to their discourses, whether it's in philosophy or whether it's in Kathas, Purans, whatever. He would listen to that very nicely. And then without hesitation, he would stand up and from his, pull out an arrow and fire an arrow at the speaker, the orator, a very rough arrow, presented very gently. He would say, "Sir, you talk about God. Have you seen God?" It's a very blunt question, very fiery question. This particular question shattered every orator he came across. He shattered them. Because they would say, "Well, we get a feeling." He said, "Oh, waste of time." He went to Devendranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore's father was supposed to be Maharshi Devendranath Tagore. So people said, "Oh yes, he's a spiritual personality." He went to him, flung open his door, went into his drawing room and said, "Sir, have you seen God?" You must say it's a rude fellow just walking into somebody's house and challenging him and asking questions like that. But do you know what was driving him? In his heart of hearts, he knew there is reality behind this idea of God. There is something true there, and yet he's not able to find any proof or any evidence about it. That's why he's getting rattled. And this is a serious rattle. We should all feel that. If it's for real, I want to come face to face with it. And if I can come face to face with it, has somebody else come face to face with it? First-hand experience, can somebody assert they have seen God? The more he asked, the more worried he became because nobody gave him a proper answer, including Devendranath Tagore. He went and said, "Have you seen God?" He said, "My boy, you've got such lovely eyes." He said, "Oh, go away." He walked away. It's very rude. He said, "This is waste of time." You see, he was looking for a spiritual personality who could affirm without hesitation that God is not a matter of book learning, not a matter of intellectual acceptance, but a matter of first-hand experience. First-hand experience is the minimum requirement. You don't even start your religious journey unless you come face to face with this thing called God. You must come face to face with it. How can you believe it otherwise? Because it's scribbled in some book? Who cares? This was his approach, very fiery. And he was feeling more and more disappointed, and he was getting more and more worked up and more atheistic, Gnostic, saying this is all because everybody I tried have given me a waffle. Nobody's given me a clear answer to this very important question, and nobody could. And he continued to struggle. He was studying at a college where there was a Scottish professor called Professor Hastie, William Hastie. One day in the class, Professor Hastie said, there are individuals who are so blessed. He was talking about Wordsworth, the mystic poet, the mystic English poet. He said there are certain individuals who are blessed to experience spirituality for themselves, this exciting experience of spirit. There are some individuals like that, and Wordsworth was like that. In fact, if you study Wordsworth, you'll see why he's such a thrilling poet, or William Blake for that matter. These are mystic poets. So this Hastie said, well, we heard of Wordsworth, but there is only one individual that I know in Calcutta who can claim similar experience, ecstasy as experience of God, personal, first-hand, in Calcutta, modern Calcutta. And the name of this personality, said Professor Hastie, is Ramakrishna, an illiterate priest in the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar, north of Calcutta. So Narendra heard about it. He said, illiterate priest is hardly going to stand up to my challenge. Because by this time Vivekananda has studied David Hume, he has studied Schopenhauer, he has studied Kant, he has studied all the Western philosophers, he knows all the arguments regarding proof of God. He is fully aware, he is very sharp. I told you, here is a personality with an intellect as sharp as the intellect of Adi Shankara, and with a heart as compassionate as the great Buddha. Both combined in one life. Tremendous intellect, very sharp intellect, and tremendous compassion, searching to make sense of life and what is this all about. Both these are very visible in his life. And he said, this illiterate priest can never satisfy me. I'm wasting my time. So he kept fobbing it off. He wasn't prepared to go and visit him. One of his cousin brothers used to visit Ramakrishna. He said, look, Narendra, if you are really serious about God, stop bothering these other Puranis. Go to this master. He will put your mind at rest. There's nobody better. Go and visit him. So the story goes, this Narendra one day decides to visit Dakshineshwar. He looks at Ramakrishna, who is just wearing a simple white piece of cloth, no external signs of religion, no tila tapka, nothing, no mara, nothing. Sitting on a wooden bench, talking to a few youngsters who are sitting on the mat and talking very sweetly about experience of God, spirituality, very fast, and you can see he's charged up. So Narendra sat in the corner like a good little boy, a good young man, and listened quietly. He was very respectful. When this discourse finished, he stood up, took out his arrow without hesitation. I told you, he's very blunt, very blatant, because he's serious about religion. He's not looking for superficial, he wants serious religion. He took out his arrow and fired at Ramakrishna. Sir, you talk about God. Have you seen God? Now, most people that he fired this question to collapsed. They gave a waffle or ran away. Here, he met his match. The response he got instantaneously, it was not something that he had to think about. Instantaneously, the response he got from this Ramakrishna is, my boy, I can see God. I can see God more clearly than I can see you. Now, this is something unusual. Because you see, here is a person, somebody, a guileless person, very honest. You can see he's very honest. Speaking from his experience, say, look, you see, who is interested in finding God? People cry pots of tears for their family, for the wealth, for all these kind of things. They cry and weep. Who is crying for God? Who is serious about God? If you are serious about God, you can come face to face. I can see God more clearly than I see you, my boy. This is a very dramatic statement. Because if God experience, suppose somebody said, I can see God just like I can see you, that would be suspect. You know why? Because the God experience has to be far more intense than our experience of reality in this sense. It has to be far more intense. So when he said this, we are kind of rattled because nobody had given. You see, unless you have first an experience, you can't use language. Remember this thing. Whenever you meet a spiritual giant, He will not fall back on some Shastras and pull out in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, 14 verse. He will not do that. New Bhagavad Gita will flow out of his lips because he's talking from first and linked with spirituality. So the language will be very novel, very unusual. He will not fall back on ancient scripture. He will produce new scripture. And this is what Ramakrishna did. God can be seen more clearly than you can see this world that you are so sure about, this empirical universe that you are so certain about. It is a much more intense experience than this experience of you and me here. This was dramatic stuff. You won't find it in ancient books. And this Narendra was rattled. He thought maybe this guy has got a few screws loose here. You know, and all his marbles are not there. Maybe he's a bit nuts. He's talking, he can see God. You know, if anybody makes claims that they can see God, you must check out the local lunatic asylums. Possible somebody escaped. So Narendra is, look, he's a rationalist. Strongly, as I told you, feet firmly implanted in rationality. Cannot be easily bought out. He said, this guy sounds very natural, very sensible, very gentle, very honest. And yet this thing is too heavy. I can't accept this. Let me check him out again. I'll come again. Now you see, this Ramakrishna was already expecting this young boy to turn up on his doorstep. There's a little story, a bit of magic. Let me put a little bit of magic in the story. This Ramakrishna later on said, one day in deepest of meditation, my mind went on a luminous path to an area, to a world where the relative meet up with the absolute and is separated by a luminous place. Just flow with me for the time being. You always keep your rationality switched on. Don't agree with me. If it doesn't make sense, Dilip, I'm flying off now. But let me fly off. So Ramakrishna said, I go into this state of meditation where I see the relative meeting the absolute. Look at the language, relative meeting the absolute, and there's a luminous boundary separating. And as my mind was traveling, I could see all the forms of gods and goddesses on my right and my left as my mind traveled to the sphere of the absolute. Just there on the border, I suddenly saw 7 ancient sages of India, made of light, bodies made of light, sitting in deep meditation. And my Ramakrishna said, my mind said, oh, what grand personalities. Here are these personalities who are not even prepared to embrace the absolute. They want to sit on the borderline so they can interact with humanity and help humanity. They don't want to disappear in the absolute. They want to continue to relate to human beings. What marvelous people. And he said, when I saw one of these personalities, one of these rishis, this ancient sage of India, I said, this man is going to come down to earth for the help, for the benefit of humanity. And when I saw Narendra for the first time, I knew this is that rishi that I saw in the deepest of meditation, who has come for the benefit of humanity. Now, when Ramakrishna and Narendra met like this at the beginning, at the first stages, one day Ramakrishna dragged him away and took him in a very secluded spot and said, look, here is this Ramakrishna establishing God realization, well known for it. Here is this 18-year-old boy challenging religion. He took him out, and Ramakrishna folded his hands and bowed down to him and said, you are that great sage who has come down for the benefit of humanity. And Narendra was saying, my name is Narendra Vishwanath Dutt. He's calling me a rishi. He's certainly lost his marbles. This man has gone mad now. He said, wait here, I have to feed you. Then he went in, he's a Bengali, brought a lot of rasgullas, whole pot full of them, and said, open your mouth. Now if you ask an 18-year-old boy here to open his mouth and you feed rasgullas, he is not going to like it. He said, just give it to me, I'll eat it by myself. No, open your mouth. He started stuffing those. You see, because here Ramakrishna has met his match. This boy was going to be the carrier of his message to the rest of the world, and he recognized him. The Guru bowing down to the disciple. Very unusual meeting. The story doesn't stop there. Now, Ramakrishna told Vivekananda, come again, one day come again, I want to talk to you. Narendra, come. So second time Narendra visited Ramakrishna because he was hooked now. This man is talking something very dramatically unusual, and his language is unusual because not in any scripture and seems to make sense. God experience must be far more intense than our human experience of each other. And he's saying so. He went again. Second time he went. You see, Ramakrishna wanted to give him his inheritance because this boy was saying, have you seen God? Ramakrishna said, not only can I see God, I can show him to you. He wanted to give it away. Give the inheritance of God experience to this young boy immediately without any hesitation. Look, if you find a disciple or a young aspirant who is keen to experience God and you have that ability to give it to him, would you wait? Would you say, no, he has to pass certain examinations and that? You give it away because you are in love with that individual. So Ramakrishna wanted to give it away. So next time Narendra went, he said, these are his words. He said, Ramakrishna made me sit down. Then he came, mumbling something, mutter, 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 and he touched me. The moment he touched me, Narendra said, suddenly I'm a very rational person, very strong will-powered. Suddenly, even with open eyes, I could see the whole universe suddenly disappearing into nothingness. The walls, the temple, the floor, me, my body, everything was beginning to disappear into nothingness. And I screamed, I said, stop it, don't you think I've got a mother and father at home? What are you doing to me? And Ramakrishna smiled and touched him a second time. And the walls came back. Everything came back to normal. Now Vivekananda said, he's using hypnotism. He's doing some weird thing on me. I'm a strong-willed person, I won't let him. But Ramakrishna said, look, this boy is already established in God experience. I wanted to give it to him consciously. I touched him and give him his inheritance. But because it was such a dramatic experience, he was rattled. And he said, stop it. He needed time to absorb this experience. So I said, okay, your time will come. Now, from now on, this Narendra is hooked with Ramakrishna. Here is a proponent of spirituality in modern age who has come with a modern message of spirituality, a very comprehensive message. Not a narrow message just suited to the needs of the Hindus, the brown-skinned people of the Indian subcontinent. A message that is universally valid, universally thrilling and dynamic, and presenting spirituality in the modern mold, in the mold that the world requires. Here is this great personality. And he needed a carrier, somebody to take this message. So he produced this Vivekananda. In the next 6 years, he trained him, he lifted him up until Vivekananda could claim, God is a matter of experience for me. Find me, other Hindus who can make that claim, find me. They are very few and far between. These are the real giants of spirituality. For them, religion is not a matter of just belief system, just intellectual acceptance. Drink a cup of coffee and let me work out. Can there be a God? Surely there must be somebody behind this universe. Let me work out. Drink cups of coffee to work it out. This is called intellectual acceptance or rejection. God cannot be that. It must be much more intense. If it's a reality, you must come face to face with it. It must, blow your fuses. It must be that dramatic. So next few years now, Vivekananda stays with Ramakrishna. And this inheritance that his master possesses, he becomes the carrier of it to present it to the greater world. I'm going a bit fast forward. You see, this Ramakrishna Vivekananda relationship and what they stand for. You see, let me explain. We Hindus say that spirituality cannot be confined to some golden period in the ancient times. Say, all these great sages, Vishwamitra, Vashishta lived 5,000 years ago, and Ram and Krishna, and that was the golden period where spirituality became revealed to the world. And this is captured in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Upanishads. That's it, that was the golden period. If you make that claim, your religion is really kind of lost its plot, because it is not a universal phenomena. It's a quirk of nature. It's just something that was suitable for a certain historic period in time. It's hardly universal. If spirituality is truly a universal phenomena, it should be possible to produce modern proponents of spirituality who can talk of the same experience and present it to us in our language, in our times, in a mold that fits our requirements. Otherwise, it's just a quirk of nature. It's hardly worth bothering with. Your religion allows evolution to the ideas of religion, spirituality, God. It allows for this flow, and it recognizes that you may have had prophets, great prophets in the past, who make us feel, wow, how powerful, how grand. But it makes room for modern proponents of spirituality who will present the same ideas in our times, in our language. It doesn't stop there. He says, why do you think that the spiritual is just confined to the past and present? Maybe in days to come, there will be prophets greater than the ones we have seen so far. Why do you denigrate humanity? They will produce giants, spiritual giants, perhaps much more superior in days to come. We bow down to the prophets of the past. We pay tribute to the prophets of today. And we are ready to welcome the prophets of the future who will thrill mankind, the message of spirituality in days to come. This is the story of Vivekananda.